Hello and welcome. I'm RealCrowd CEO Adam Hooper, and this is the Real Estate Investing for Your Future podcast. Here we explore the latest in commercial real estate trends, insights, and investment strategies that passive investors can use to build real estate portfolios that last.
All opinions expressed by Adam, Tyler, and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of RealCrowd. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. To gain a better understanding of the risks associated with commercial real estate investing, please consult your advisors.
Our guest today is Michael Beckerman, CEO at CREtech and CREtech Climate. In today's conversation, Michael discusses his upcoming conference in New York featuring some of the biggest names in commercial real estate, his founding of the CREtech Climate Program to solve the 40% problem, and how new technology will drive tomorrow's real estate. If you want to attend the CREtech conference in New York, check the show notes for some more information and a special promo code. I'll be there as well, so send me a note if you want to connect. We hope you enjoyed today's episode with Michael Beckerman. All right, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been, I was looking at the calendar, it's been a couple of years since we spoke last, kind of early pandemic days. So a lot has changed since then. We appreciate you coming back on the show. So why don't you tell us what's been in your world? What's happening since we connected back in 2020 with CREtech?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan, a big supporter of RealCrowd and all that you guys are doing. And appreciate all the support that you've given, not just CREtech, but our entire ecosystem. You've really advanced the conversation, elevated it, and just amplified all the great innovation that's happening in the entire prop tech ecosystem. So just, first and foremost, with gratitude, thanks for all the great work you guys are doing, and appreciate the support of CREtech. So yeah, it's been quite the roller coaster, which it has been for many. So we're not unique in that regard. But being in the physical conference business during COVID, as you can imagine, when your primary source of revenue is people meeting each other in person, was not a fun experience. But around as long as I have been in business, you realize that once you get through the shock of whatever, challenges that you're faced with, you can look at it also like, there's a horrible thing to say about COVID, but there's a silver lining here. And I really feel like we got better as a company. We got more focused as a company. We got more disciplined as a company. We had to make, really tough choices, but definitely I think CREtech has emerged stronger than ever. And I think our industry as well has gotten so much stronger through COVID. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit later in the show about the upcoming conference you guys are doing again this year. But how was that transition to virtual? I know you were doing it virtual for a while, back to in-person now. Is there still a virtual component? And I guess the thread there is as we've seen this kind of questions around return to office, staying virtual, staying, hybrid. How are you guys looking at in what has always been a very physical, intimate physical environment, right? In conferences and networking. I'm just curious, what's changed about your business that's going to be longer lasting than maybe this temporary disruption that you guys saw when you had to go all virtual?
Yeah, great question, man. So I think we were one of the first to pivot to all virtual in the beginning of COVID. We had to cancel some in-person events that were scheduled, and that was very, very, very difficult at that time. I remember my team, led by my company president, Lindsay Imperator, did a phenomenal job of just navigating that really, really complex and challenging and chaotic environment. And we pivoted to virtual, and it was good until it wasn't. And, I still think that there's a place for virtual. Virtual meetings are great. I'm enjoying not commuting into New York every day. Trust me. Its quality of life is definitely better. I'm working harder than ever. I'm on more, Zoom calls than ever. But, for us, we in the very beginning, we did a couple of virtual events that were really, really successful. But then, I just always try and listen to the marketplace, and you listen to your audience, and you listen to what's happening, and you observe, you look at the data. And there was definitely fatigue. So people were just getting back to work, and they didn't have time to show up for a virtual conference. It was asking too much. So we just kind of wound that down. We'll do some virtual in webinars where it makes sense. We'll stream all of our content from our conferences, our live conferences, onto our streaming platform for people to consume. And we'll create stuff that's for on demand. We have a product called CREtech Plus, very similar to a Netflix or a Disney Plus. So a lot of the content lives there. But I'm just trying to be much more selective with when we do virtual. But I think the experiment of all virtual conferences, which in my industry was all the rage for a while, I think it was a failed experiment, in my humble opinion. People want to be back. They want to see each other. They want to transact in person. They want to meet and greet and network. So if anything, I think it's created more demand and more excitement around in-person meetings and conferences.
Yeah, we didn't know how much we missed it until we missed it, right?
Right.
And I guess, what are some of the learnings in that switch of going back to in-person have you taken from going virtual? And did you learn anything in terms of how you facilitate networking or presentation style or venues or anything like that? What did you learn from going virtual that you're taking into the going back into in-person going forward?
Yeah, great question. It's a great question, Adam. It's a great question. I think the biggest lesson, the takeaways that I sit with now is just that I think there's so much pressure on everybody's time because we're balancing virtual, we're balancing hybrid, we're balancing in person. That I'm just much more conscious of what we're asking of our audience, and what they're capable of giving us. So I'm extremely mindful of whatever we do has to be so purposeful. So I think for me that was like the big sort of lesson, like less is more, I think, in the future.
And now, I guess since we're kind of going down the conference path, why don't you tell us a little bit about the conference coming up, and listeners out there, be sure to check show notes for links to register for this. So maybe give us an overview of what your upcoming CREtech conference is going to be like.
Thanks, man. The thing, we've been at this since 2017, and the first thing I would say is that our core mission at CREtech is driving innovation in the world's largest asset class, commercial real estate. So we want to be the catalyst. We want to be the platform where people come to discover all the great innovation with companies like RealCrowd and what have you. So my job is to sort of build this ecosystem, build the community, and connect people. So when I think about what it felt like in 2017 compared to today, I mean, at that time, it was mostly startups talking to venture, startups talking to themselves. We didn't really have the buy-in of the real estate industry. If I got a couple hundred people to an event, it was a great event, at that time. And then fast forward to like what's coming up at our conference in New York in October 12th and 13th, there'll be a couple thousand people, but the real takeaway for me, or the real insight, everybody will come there and they'll see this massive crowd, this buzz of activity, the electricity in the air, a hub of just energy. But what I see, I have the unique vantage point to see who's there. And I've never seen a time where the real estate industry has shown up for a tech conference like the one coming up, and that bodes well for the entire industry, right? Because that everybody's boat rises there. When we get the buyers at the table, everybody wins, and so that's the great trend that I'm seeing, and it's global, right? So we've got people coming in from all over the world. We've got the largest pension funds, asset managers. You've got the largest owners, operators in the world in all food groups. You've got office, you've got multifamily, which are the two main stakeholders. You've got logistics, though. You've got retail. You've got some hospitality, and you got some residential as well. So I think the tent continues to expand. So for New York, that's like for me, which gives me the greatest source of pride. It's never about. It is important how many people are there, but it's the caliber of people there and who's coming. And then the second thing is, one of the things about CREtech is that because I work mostly on the programming, is that I try and focus on is, I think it's less important to get very, very detailed in the weeds on specific topics. And what really moves the market is when you've got companies that are on stage, their C-suites, their CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, CFOs, COOs, whatever, heads of innovation, and they're talking about their playbook and their strategies. And it for me, that is what really gets me so excited. And I'm just still in awe of the caliber of these real estate executives that are showing up. From Oxford Properties to Jamestown, Hines, Greystar, Related, Boston Properties, and it's really it's their most senior executives. So that's what gives me just great hope and excitement for the future.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty heavy hitter list for the agenda and lineup this year. I'm wondering, when we were first coming out of COVID, we talked about revenge travel. We haven't seen it in other conferences yet, but again, the roster that you guys have lined up, I'm wondering, is there like a revenge conference season? Like people we've been waiting for this, right? We wanted to get back to this, and we're inherently social beings, right? And so to be able to have some of these kind of critical mass of influencers and great minds coming back together, I think that's pretty special. So congrats on what you guys have been doing.
Yeah, man, I love
that.
Excited
to see it come back.
That's great. Well, I tell you, so the thing that I've tried to do with the conferences is I envision them as, there's something there for everybody. So if you're, if you're coming to network, we will have a dedicated area just to networking. And so you'll use our app, and you'll make meetings with everybody who's attending. And it's speed dating, and it's amazing what happens. And people tell us they're exhausted by the end of the day. If you want to discover some actual great products and solutions, there'll be there's a trade show floor. So we've got great ability to, people are demonstrating the products and what have you. If you want to hear startups talking about their path, there's an innovation stage. If you want to discover climate technology solutions, we've got a dedicated climate pavilion. We've also now got one for affordable housing technology. And then you've got the keynote stage. So whether it's content, networking, biz dev, fundraising, we're just trying to make it so that whatever your objectives are, you'll find them at the show. And yeah, man, people... and I'll just say one other thing, it's in my backyard, but, for us, there's only one place to do this, and that's, with all due respect to other great cities in the U.S., and that's New York. Those that say New York is best days, are behind them. They don't know New York City. They don't know the resilience of the city. They don't understand what it was like growing up there in the 70s or the 80s, living through 9/11 in New York. I mean, it's the most resilient city in the world. So for us, it has to be New York. So that also, I think a lot of people are excited to come into New York.
Good. Well, so now CREtech, obviously you are one of the probably most connected guys in the real estate tech space, at the nexus of all these different constituencies coming together. What are you seeing that is interesting maybe in the innovation stage, right? Or maybe some of these technologies that have been trying to break into the real estate space for a while now, it's starting to take some foothold. I guess when you look at some of the presenters or keynotes or attendees of the conference, what has you excited? What are you interested in these days?
What a great question. Well, I mean, for me, it's the scale of the industry. There's some reports I saw JLL put out, there's 10,000 startups, competing now. I think a couple things. I think, we're at a very interesting inflection point in the industry where there's so many great solutions out there, but the challenge remains for the tech companies that you've got, this is the largest asset class in the world. it invests the least in innovation as well as any other industry. It's like under 1%, where most are 5 to 10 that they invest in R&D. It's not because they're risk averse; they're technology risk averse. I mean, it's the riskiest in industry in the world. I mean, just imagine seeing a vacant piece of land and committing just boatloads of capital to building it and hoping that they will come. So it's not that. It's that they're understaffed. They don't have the resources. And there's the nature of the industry is that there's so many siloed solutions. So one of the real interesting trends, and we're going to hear a lot about it in New York, is that there's definitely a lot more integration amongst the tech companies, which is a wonderful development, because then you're listening to the customer saying, too many that don't integrate, don't communicate with each other. I got one solution over here for this building, one over here, one in this country, one in another country. So I think integration is a huge theme for our industry, and that's really, really exciting for me. And then there's a couple, obviously near and dear to me, as we've talked in the past, is climate, which is going to be a big source of the conversation. And just the other topics, affordable housing, tech. I look at the built world, I look at the real estate industry, I say, biggest industry on earth, it builds great cities, great structures, but there's also a lot of problems in the built environment. Climate's one, lack of affordable housing two, and others. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and technology and the real estate industry can use technology to be a great catalyst for a positive change. So that's also something that I'm really excited about. That's in the air for New York.
Yeah, and we definitely want to talk about CREtech Climate here once we get through some of the stuff about the more kind of built environment areas. Obviously, I think our industry has been slow to start thinking about climate and ESG, but I think it's definitely picking up steam, which is really good to see. But in terms of along these integrations and some of these other areas that you're talking about, I agree with you. I think that is just a natural progression, right? Everyone kind of tries to figure out their problem space, solve that problem kind of in a silo. And then when you have these companies that are integrating with, there are 5 or 6 different service providers, being able to plumb and build some of those pipes behind the scenes is really good. But I'm curious, I mean, that's from a technology perspective, yes, but how are you seeing that translate to the actual built environment, right? Are most of the things that you're seeing operational efficiencies? When you look at affordable housing, is it, how are some of these impacting affordable? Let's pick affordable housing. How are some of these different technologies impacting that? Is it construction technologies? Is it just efficiencies in operations? What are some of the interesting things you're seeing in that space?
It's on affordable housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about tech and innovation in the built environment, and you think about these different categories where it's got potential to make impact, I think whether it's affordable housing or whether it's multifamily or whether it's office or logistics, the core sort of objective that the real estate industry is looking for is, number one, it's got to be a must-have, not a nice-to-have. So, shiny objects and cool features, and if it doesn't move the needle and deliver real ROI and some kind of operational efficiency and solving a problem, it's likely not going to get adopted. So, when you think about all aspects of the industry, they're challenged with supply chain issues. They're challenged with, getting all their data in one, siloed source where they can make actionable decisions. They're challenged with doing as much as they can because of the labor shortages with technology tools. So whether it's virtual leasing or what have you, or lease or marketing. Any of those that check the box in multifamily will check the box in affordable housing, will check the box in logistics, will check the box in every single category. So I think it's kind of, while affordable housing it's a very, very new category that we're focused on, it's got the same characteristics as a lot of others, but it'll make a serious impact on people's lives. So, just things like speeding up the process of getting people qualified or delivering homes that cost less because they're either prefab or modular or 3D, and it could be assembled in a factory and shipped to a site. It could bring down the cost. So there's so many different tools that are available specifically for affordable housing. But my point is that these challenges are not unique to just housing. It's across the board that everybody's kind of struggling with.
Yeah. And then when you look at, I guess maybe two questions I'll ask here. I guess first, when you look at the companies that are being started and who's driving this innovation early in the real estate space, I think there was a pretty big gap between industry people that had an idea that were trying to come at it from a technical perspective, but with the industry context, and there were technical people that had no context about the industry and were kind of coming at it from a purely kind of innovation and idea perspective. I'm just curious, how have you seen that dynamic in terms of who's driving these innovations? Are they industry people that are trying to do things different? Are they coming from outside the industry and maybe learning from other areas and layering those into the real estate space? What are you seeing there?
I love that question, Adam. Thank you. That's great, man. That's great. Great question. I haven't been asked that one before. I think we're at.
We try to ask good questions here, Michael.
No, man, it's great. It's great. It's really, really, really. You got me on that one. I think it's really, and I had a couple examples actually today of some entrepreneurs that I connected with. I think it's really like 2.0 in terms of the entrepreneurs. I think the first sort of rush to innovation in this industry was, people that sort of scratching their own itch, but they were a broker or working for a real estate company and they saw a problem. They went out and tried to fix it. We've got some great companies, legacy companies that have been able to do that. I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing some real, technologically gifted people from outside the industry coming in. That it's maturing a little bit. So a lot of the founders that I'm connecting with now do not have the real estate background that I think the 1.0s did. And so they're coming from another tech company and they're still scratching an itch. So it'll be something like, I bought a home or I bought an apartment and I saw how dysfunctional and archaic it was. So I went to go solve that problem. Or something with capital markets, or something with insurance, or compliance, or underwriting, or vendor procurement. Like, we're seeing this new crop of entrepreneurs that are coming in, and they're really, really accomplished, and they have real tech chops, and they've done this before. They're serial entrepreneurs. And yet they have some connection to the real estate industry, and they're driving innovation, which I think is a great thing for our industry to attract that kind of talent.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for that clarification. I think that feeds into the second part of the question I was hoping to ask was, you've got a lot of innovation, good, bad, or otherwise, is driven where the dollars are going, right? And what's interesting to the VCs and to the funding sources for these things. And when you have entrepreneurs that have maybe had successful ventures before, they've got VC relationships, they have some influence, I guess, in where some of that innovation goes. I'm curious from your perspective, where are the most interesting areas that VCs are looking at right now in terms of driving any of those directions from a funding source? Like, what's interesting to the capital side of this innovation environment right now?
Another great one, Adam. Man, love it. Well, let's take a step back, right? So we're definitely in a period of, where the venture dollars, they're still flowing, but they're flowing a little bit more cautiously and prudently, which is a good thing. 6 months ago, we had this podcast. If you ask me what's the venture climate, I'd say it's effing insane, man.
Great.
Like, there's so much money being thrown at so many startups, and I'll hear these stories from these different venture groups about jockeying to get more money into a position where they're trying to outmaneuver another one. It just felt pretty frenetic. But now I think people have pushed pause, and just given what's going on in the economy, et cetera, the other challenges we talked about, labor, supply chain, interest rates. So there's definitely more caution. I think what people are looking for is sort of the same thing they've always been looking for, is like, recognizing that unfortunately 90% of all startups fail. They're looking for big addressable markets and startups that are solving those problems that can really scale. And I think, the thing that I'm seeing now is that there are parts of the industry that I don't think have even been touched yet. There's some amazing innovation coming, and there are things having to do with property management or vendor procurement or construction. So there's just, I think, the first sort of wave of innovation, whether it was like building access or tenant experience or sort of data and information. I think the winners, I'm not going to say they've all been picked, but I think those categories have gotten a little bit more mature than others. And now I think where the innovation is coming from is, okay, what parts of this industry are archaic still in the way that they lack sort of a digital solution, and so construction, a huge one. So you're starting to see more and more startups on construction. We're seeing more and more on the fintech side of the business, capital market side of the business, which is great. And again, as I said, property management, facilities management, just other parts of the business that I think the first sort of 1.0 was very much, let's attack the obvious parts of the industry, leasing, data, tenant experience has been great. And now I think it's about, we're going deeper into the built world, and how it can be streamlined and made more efficient.
And I'll maybe tee you up here to start talking a little bit about CREtech Climate, but what of those areas has you most interested? Obviously, again, kind of an easy intro there to starting to talk about the climate initiatives you guys are working on. But I'm just curious, where are you personally interested? What are you most excited to see at the upcoming conference?
Thanks. Yeah, I've said that the climate crisis is the single greatest threat and single greatest opportunity to ever confront the real estate industry. And for me, and I've talked a lot, and it is personal, I've talked a lot about my own climate journey. I've considered myself an environmentalist. I believe in science. I mean, how can you not today? My happiest place, other than with my family and my friends, is being in the woods on a mountain somewhere. So I live that lifestyle, but I never really understood that the built environment was 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions, and that hit me just recently through COVID, Adam, where I was just like, wait, no, it's transportation, it's oil, it's something, it's coal, it's not real estate. What are you talking about? It's not dirty. And then when you really start to do your homework and you understand that it's 40%, and of the built environment is generating more carbon emissions than any other industry on earth. So I said, man, this has to be my life journey, my life's purpose, my life's mission. And it's 29% of that 40 is on the operating of these buildings, the carbon emissions that come from the actual physical structures, and then the 11 is coming from embodied carbon, the construction and the transport of all the materials when we build. And so I said, I've got a big mouth, a big audience. I'm not afraid to use it for what I know is going to be great for, my kids and their kids. And so, I always come back to that line about, what did you do when you knew the fact, what did you do? So climate's not a market. It's an obvious market for us at CREtech to go grab and scale and make money on in the short term. No way. There's plenty of other ways to make money, what we're doing and monetize, but it's the right thing to do. And as long as I'm running the company, it's going to be the right thing. So, my friend Travis Connors at Building Ventures, a terrific a venture firm. He calls it the 40% problem. The built environment's 40% of greenhouse gas emissions, 40% of energy consumed, 40% of raw materials used, 40% of landfill materials. So, and then you just look at all the legislation that's coming down. You look at what tenants are demanding now, what consumers and residents are demanding now, and then just you look at the climate exposure, the risk exposure that the built environment faces given the climate crisis. No other industry has as much exposed as the building environment. So whether it's flood, wildfire, heat, drought, whatever, you name it, they're just incredibly exposed from a risk point of view. So, then you add in the Inflation Reduction Act, which really should be called the Carbon Reduction Act, but politics, whatever, I don't get involved. And that's a great catalyst. So, there are some amazing companies that are doing some incredible work on their net zero commitments and not greenwashing, for the ones that I connect with. And so I'm incredibly inspired. I have not a podcast like this, of course, but I have my own podcast. I'm doing keynotes wherever I can, talking about this topic, and we're going to program it as much as I can at the conferences. We'll have a lot of content. As I said, I've got a climate pavilion, dedicated one at the conference, and it's something I'm going to build and build and build and build, and prop tech's not going away. I just see this as, like I talked at the beginning of the podcast, we're just building out the tent. But this is going to be the big one. I mean, this is the last point. As you can tell, I get pretty passionate about this. The numbers to decarbonize the built environment are staggering. Yep. They're mind-boggling. It's hard to get your head around. I mean, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of it's going to cost about $20 trillion on hardware to decarbonize the built environment. It's going to cost probably another 100 for mitigation and resilience investments to retrofit and to ensure that the built environment can survive the crisis. So you're thinking about, like, it's 100 to 120 trillion dollars over 20 to 30 years, 5 trillion or so annually. I mean, that's like the US GDP, I think, is 20 trillion. So it's all, when I talk about the biggest opportunity, it's the single greatest wealth creation opportunity in history. And that's not Michael Beckerman saying that. That's every leading venture firm in the world concludes that. I mean, Larry Fink said the next 1,000 unicorns won't be a search engine or a media company. There'll be companies developing green hydrogen, green agriculture, green steel, and green cement. So, yeah, I'm on my soapbox now, but this is one you could tell I'm pretty passionate about.
No, I think it's great, right? I mean, I'm totally on the same page, right? I think we need more of that, and we need a louder mouthpiece for that, if anything. And
I'm the louder mouthpiece, man.
here you are. I'm just
job accepted.
It is such a huge topic that it feels so long term, so far away, so massive to try to unpack. It's easy to just kind of kick the can, right? So I guess maybe bringing that down to a more tangible, right in front of us thing. What are some of the things that we can be doing as it relates to built environment or technology, or maybe what are some of the more near-term technologies you're seeing that can have an immediate impact, something that we can kind of wrap our heads around in the short term that'll have that longer-term impact as well?
Yeah, another great one, Adam. So, for me, I'm about the tech part of this, right? So I'm all, my focus is not changing behavior. It's not, preaching about the importance or the whys and you should. It's not me to browbeat the industry, to, make them feel, that they're culpable in the climate crisis. But my job is to focus them on the solutions. Thank you. So it's a great question. So the good news is that a lot of the solutions are already on the marketplace. So when you talk to, the leaders in this industry, the Ben Myers, of Boston Properties, the J.P. Flaherty's, of Tishman Spires, the Natalie Tiers at Hudson Pacific. You know, when you ask them what they're using, I mean, they've got a laundry list of solutions that they're implementing, right? And so there's a lot there. I mean, just on the existing buildings, I mean, there's you know, the great advances in glass insulation and controls. There's great advances on HVAC systems, upgrades, heat pumps, replacing appliances. There's great advances just electrifying buildings. I mean, a lot of those solutions are all there. That they're on the market now, so you can go get them. And then, you know, you think about some of the materials that are needed. You know, where it's carbon neutral concrete, mass timber, prefabricated modular construction, or 3D printed homes, great advancements made in steel as well. And then just, you know, there's all these software tools that are out there just on sort of energy management. And then there's great companies like the Measurables of the world that are giving all these real estate companies great insights into what is their sort of carbon footprint and impact, so they can measure it, right? And so that's what gives me the great hope and excitement that, you know, I was listening to a podcast the other day with Ezra Klein, and, you know, had some you know, climate expert on, and they were talking about what they have to do on the grid, and just there's so much that has to be done, and the scale of everything, and that's all true, and it can make your head spin. And in my case, make me drink way too much tequila. But the good news is, in our industry, we've got stuff ready to go that's on the shelf. We just got to take it off the shelf and make it happen.
Do you have any sustainably produced tequila tips for anybody listeners out there?
I have organic tequila. Yeah, that qualifies.
Oh, I think it is a great point, right? And I think the perception is that there is still, it is all long-term fixes, right? There isn't that much that we can do immediately today to start having an impact. But it sounds like what you're saying is there are existing technologies that are out there that just maybe need more attention or just need to be implemented at a broader scale that can start to have that impact right away. When you're looking at some of those longer-term initiatives, what are you interested in, or what has you excited on the longer-term scale?
I mean, I think, you know, the thing is that, and I'm not trying to deflect, like, I think it's something like 90-something% of the, you know, the building stock has been around for whatever, 10, 15 years. And, you know, what a lot of the world focuses on is the great new stuff that's being built, and I love it, and it's terrific, and we should applaud it. But we've got to focus on the existing building stock in the short term, in the here and the now. And so, you know, I think that what I get excited about is that, you know, and again, it sounds like I'm deflecting, but I'm not. Like, when the message gets out, this is what excites me. When the message gets out that green buildings, healthy buildings, climate-friendly buildings, net zero buildings that are retrofitted command higher rents, higher occupancies, higher cash flow, and greater property values. So when you ask me what I'm excited about, I really just want that message to go to the industry, because that is what will really, really start to drive adoption. Longer term, you know, it's controversial, but I just hope we build less and we retrofit more.
When you look at the retrofit opportunities across the different asset classes, is it similar in terms of impact or potential when you look at office versus multifamily versus industrial versus retail? Or is it pretty consistent across?
Yeah. I mean, it's across the board. I mean, it's just think about the obsolete malls that we've got around the country. Think about the older stock of multifamily apartments that just are just, you know, oil machines, right? That they're so dirty and inefficient and unhealthy for the occupants. When you think about, you know, Class B office buildings, when you think, I mean, it's everything. It's just this existing building stock. I just want people to really try and focus in on that, because that's that short term will have the long term impact, right? Because that's where the problem lies. It's all in the, as I said, in the 40%. It's in the 29 of that is coming from these existing buildings that we're all living, occupying, traveling, shopping in. So that's where we got to focus.
I mean, it's almost, again, we see a lot of value add strategies in, certainly multifamily space and less so office and retail industrial, but it's almost like this is a new strategy, right? It's a new value add strategy. You're not just coming in and sprucing up solid surface countertops and putting in new faucets, right? But doing it with a bent towards that, again, healthier buildings, getting closer to net zero. That in and of itself could almost be a new value add strategy, right? Not just layering that on top of.
Yeah. Well, I think and I'm not a real estate guy. I just play one in the movies, but
on the podcast.
There's no doubt in my mind that there's going to be a new category that's built, B to G, brown to green, where some massive company, the Blackstone kind of companies of the world, are going to go out and just buy all that building stock, renovate it, and sell it in a couple of years. I mean, you just think about it, and you just think about the scale of the current problem. Like, I read somewhere that by 2050, 300 million people around the world will fall below elevation. Will live in coastal flooding area, properties that are at risk from the climate crisis. I mean, it's just staggering. With current trends, we can't reverse it at this point. We got to hold the line. How many lives are at stake if we don't do anything? And so we got to attack where they're living and where they're. I mean, is it realistic that all these people are just going to get up and move to Canada or or wherever? No. So it's a lot of my mind is about the mitigation of the risk that people are going to be exposed to.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate you taking a voice on that, right? Because like I said, I think our industry has been pretty slow to start coming around to this. It's certainly lagging behind other financial industries. Fifth Wall, they were, I think, one of the first to start a big ESG initiative in their funds, and I think we're seeing more starting to pay attention to that. I think the conversation is becoming louder and more part of the mainstream. So again, I applaud you certainly for helping ring that bell and doing what you can to keep that push going.
Trying, man. Thanks, Adam. Trying.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess as we kind of let you go here, our normal questions at the end are, what keeps you up at night? I think you might have just given us something that keeps you up at night. But I guess maybe relating that back to technology side of things, right? I mean, what are you concerned about? Obviously, climate we know is a huge concern for all of us, or should be. But what are some of those things about the space or industry or what you're up to that are maybe concerns that you have looking forward?
Another great question, Adam. Thank you. Man, I've done a lot of these. You really get right to the chase, and you ask some really great, thoughtful questions. I appreciate it. What keeps me up at night? I think it is that there are way too many mouths to feed, and there's just not enough food on the table. That's what stresses me. That because I care so much about this industry. When I'm at CREtech and I look out in the audience and I see so many faces and so many people who've given up, good stable jobs to pursue a dream. I know how hard it is. I've been an entrepreneur since I've been in my 21 years of age when I started working full time, and I know how hard it is. It's hard for me every day still, and I worry about how many of these companies are going to survive. And, my Buddhist nature, because I am a Buddhist, says, well, that's Darwinism, right? They can't all survive. They're not. Well, I don't know, man. I beg to differ. I mean, it's a hugely, risky venture that, the path that entrepreneurs like yourselves, they take, and Tyler, And I worry that, the industry is still so young and that the adoption is still so slow when you think about it. And that's the reality is that, a lot of the companies just won't survive. So that's why when you asked me earlier about some of the trends, my message is, all right, you gotta integrate, you gotta work with others, you gotta go into the ecosystem and partner up, you gotta collaborate, you might have to merge or sell with bigger, more, better funded companies or what have you. So, that's what stresses me right now. It's not like we're a consumer marketplace, obviously, where you can just build an app and it could cost you $5,000 and $10,000, and you put it on the cloud and it's go, and you could it's like the market just moves so quick. This is a very complicated, complex, under-resourced, massive industry that's going to we're in the second inning. So that's what keeps me up at night. It's just that a lot of these companies just unfortunately won't make it. And what can I do to be more helpful?
That was one of the, I think the things that stuck with you the most when we were starting this company, going through YC, Y Combinator, down the Bay Area, was that it doesn't get any easier. It just gets different, right? It's not necessarily less stressful 9 years into this, 10 years into the journey. It's just different. And so that certainly persists.
And Adam, that's right. I mean, I've been following you guys forever. I'm a huge fan of Real Crowd. It doesn't get easier. I mean, even my own business. I mean, you could look at it and say, "Oh, you're doing great." Yeah, I mean, I think we're, literally, like, I don't want to brag, but we're like 20 times what we were when we started, right, in terms of scale and size. And it's as hard as ever because now I gotta keep going. My couple thousand conference has got to be a 5,000. It's got to be a 10,000. And you got to attract more people. So no, the journey never gets easier, and that. And you wake up every day and you have a big vision, and you just focus on the small details, and you just grind, right? I mean, I don't have to tell you guys. You guys have been doing great.
Try to execute. So flip side of that, what has you most optimistic these days, Michael?
Wow, great one. What's got me most optimistic? I mean, I think it's like I said earlier, is the caliber and that the industry's paying attention to all of us, the real estate industry, the buyers, and more than ever, and we'll see it in New York in a couple of weeks, or whenever, say hours or a week. That's got me really excited. Is like I look at the list, and by the way, nobody else can. I look at the list and I look at it and I go, I never met this person. At the beginning, it's just been like, I got to literally connect with everybody. Come on in, come over here. It's cool. We got free food. We got drinks. It's fun. It's cool. There's fun here. Come on in. And now they're just all coming in. So that's what got me most excited. And I think just going back, sorry, to the climate stuff, I think we have an opportunity as an industry to change the world. And so that's also got me so excited.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up on, Michael. Again, always appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for coming on today. Why don't you tell the listeners how they can learn more about what you are up to with CREtech and your CREtech Climate initiatives?
Well, thanks, Adam. And again, to you and Tyler, I so appreciate all the support from Real Crowd, not just for CREtech. I mean, it's just for the industry. You guys really advance the caliber of the conversation, and you amplify so much good that's happening. So I'm just deeply, deeply appreciative of all the great work that you guys do. And yeah, I mean, it's just CREtech.com. Conference is October 12th and 13th. It'll be great. I'm really, really excited about it. And you can follow me on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, it's just CREtech.com is where you'll find everything we talked about and more.
Perfect. And we'll have links in the show notes for everybody, and would wholeheartedly recommend you go check out the conference. It's been a fantastic spend of our time every time we've been there, and should be another good year. Perfect.
Thanks,
well, Michael,
guys. Again,
really appreciate it. Thank you. And listeners, that's all we've got for today. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please send us a note to podcast@realcrowd.com. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one.